Okay, Q&A, and we've got up till 9 o'clock, so we can get through a fair number of questions. Thank you to you all who've put in these questions tonight. Unfortunately, a good number of you didn't put your names on the sheet, so I'll start with one which does have a name, from Sean Lovell, and this is to both of you. How could you present a positive and hopeful message for the referendum instead of the negative campaigning we've seen from both sides up to now? That's to both of you.
All right. Well, I think the Leave campaign generally, and particularly those in UKIP and in Labour Leave and in Leave EU, have been really pushing a positive message. The problem is sometimes the media don't want to pick it up. All they want to do at the moment is have conservative versus conservative, blue on blue. You know, it's been extremely difficult sometimes to get across the message. But to me, it is a positive case, because there's nothing more positive, if you love your country, as I do, to feel that you want to be able to control what is happening in your country, and that you want to have your elected politicians able to be kicked out, as we do when we disagree with them and they don't fulfill what they're saying to do, they're going to do. And of course, we can't do that at the moment. The positive message also to me is that, you know, we still are a great country. I've said earlier, we have the 5th largest economy. We have the 4th military power in the world. English is spoken all over the world. We have huge opportunities to trade with the rest of the world. And for me, a very important part of what I think was so disgraceful about us joining the EEC Common Market was the way we abandoned the Commonwealth. And I think that there is an opportunity to build on that. So it's such a win-win. I really genuinely can't understand how anyone could think that to be part of 28 other countries, when the world is huge, when Europe itself is well over 50 countries, when we've got, when it's a shrinking market, all of those things, why do we want to be there in that when we could break free, get control back, get control of our borders, get control of our courts, and do the things that, all those things that we've already got in terms of labour, trade union rights, social rights at work, maternity benefits. None of those will go on June the 24th. If you waken up, they're all enshrined in British law. If they were to be repealed, and don't be taken in by those who say that, oh, you'll lose all your rights, it's just nonsense, because they're in British law. The only way they could be repealed was for a British government to be elected on a manifesto to repeal them. So I'm very optimistic.
Well, Sean, I did try to be quite positive in my speech. I did say, I want my passport back, I want my borders back, I want my country back. But let me be even more positive. The fundamental problem with our political class, and it's been going on since Suez, in my opinion, is they have lost confidence and belief in this nation. I did the head-to-head debates with Nick Clegg, which I think... Anyone remember who Nick Clegg was? No, I'm not sure. But I did the debates with Nick Clegg, and we were talking about trade. And Clegg said, Britain isn't big enough, Britain isn't strong enough to stand on its own 2 feet and negotiate trade deals with the rest of the world. We have to be part of a bigger bloc to do this and succeed. And I answered Cleggers by saying that, because we're on very matey terms, as you can imagine. But I answered Clegg by saying, look, Iceland, which has got a population of 1/3 has just signed a trade deal with China. I'm damn certain that if Iceland is big enough and strong enough to sign its own deals with China, that we're big enough and strong enough to sign our own trade deals. But then it hit me. I realised what Clegg was really saying. I realise now what Heseltine's been saying for 40 years, and Ken Clarke, and all of them. And I said, Nick, what you really mean isn't that we're not big enough, isn't that we're not strong enough. You don't think we're good enough, do you? And you know something? Our political class don't think we're good enough. They don't think we're good enough to make our own laws. They don't think we're good enough to make our own trade deals. They don't think we're good enough to run our own immigration policy and everything else. And my message to you folks is, to hell with them. We are good enough, and let's get back our self-confidence.
Okay, next question. I'll probably fire them both to both of you. Do you think the exit of the UK from the EU will be followed by other member countries?
Well, I hope so. But I think the reality is that we've seen there's growing movements both on the right and on the left within the EU countries that is very, very fed up and disillusioned and calling for referendums already. So I think we will be a hugely important catalyst to get. They will either have to completely fundamentally change, which we know they don't want to do, or there will be referendums in other countries, and we can actually be proud of the fact that we have led the way.
I'm in Newcastle tomorrow, and one of the interviews I'm going to be doing is with Danish television. And I'm doing that because a piece of opinion polling out 2 weeks ago said that if Britain votes for Brexit, the Danes will vote for Dexit. And that's rather good, isn't it? And I want to say to you seriously that I love the continent of Europe. It's a great place. It's far more interesting than America or many other continents in the world, because you go 100 miles across Europe, you find different languages, different people, different wines, different cheeses, you know, I mean, but it's right, isn't it? It is the most amazing, wonderful, diverse continent on the planet. And provided that continent has democratic government, it will be a continent at peace. And what has happened here is the EU, with their flag and their anthem and their president, who no one can name unless I slag him off, but the EU has basically hijacked the word Europe and said, we are Europe. I don't believe Europe are those glass and steel structures in Brussels and Luxembourg and Strasbourg run by a bunch of unelected old men. I think Europe is this amazing place of different countries and different peoples, places we want to go on holiday, people we're happy to meet and share things with. But we don't want to be governed by EU institutions. And if we vote for Brexit, I hope and pray that within 5 to 10 years, we have a Europe of friends and neighbours working and trading together.
I personally hope the Swedes go for it, because Swexit just seems to roll off the tongue, doesn't it? And, yeah, go on. Spexit, I suppose?
Yes, I don't know. Carry on, please.
No, it was interesting that you said about unelected old men who no one can name. Did anyone see Harriet Harman on the Sunday Politics? I mean, she had absolutely no idea who Juncker was or Schultz or any of these people. Okay, question 3. And this is to Nigel specifically. If we leave the EU, how could we support the British steel industry?
Well, you say, if we leave the EU, I jolly well hope we're going to leave the EU, is all I can say to that. Look, what we've done, and this is a very appropriate question in the north of England, in the part of this country that traditionally has been where we've manufactured things, we've made things, where we've had chemical plants, aluminium smelters, and all those different things. We went down a route, Blair went down a route of pursuing an EU energy policy, which meant we put green taxes and we made the cost of electricity very, very expensive. Well, it's all well and good, you know, feeling about our consciences that we're doing the right thing, but here's what the effect has been. In Redcar, which has been a major steel manufacturer for over 100 years, The Redcar steel plant closed down. That steel production went to India, where the steel is produced with lower environmental standards, and then the steel products get shipped back to this country. So all we've done is unilaterally close down a lump of British manufacturing industry for no reduction on global CO2 whatsoever. And we've seen not just steel plants close, we've seen both our, in the last 10 years, both of our aluminium smelters close. We've seen nearly 24 chemical factories in the last decade close. Tens of thousands of jobs lost in the north of England, lost in heavy engineering and manufacturing because we are pricing ourselves out of the market. And that has been the fundamental problem that our steel industry has faced. On top of that, we have had China, which of course went through very rapid expansion, then dumping steel on the world markets at below their cost of production. And what we should be able to do is to stop unfair competition or dumping of steel onto the UK market. But guess what? We're not allowed to, because that decision has to be taken by the European Commission. And I would say this to you folks, I can't promise you that in the future a British government will get everything right. But if it doesn't get it right, we can vote the so-and-sos out and vote somebody else in who's got that power. And I believe we should be in control of our fishing industry, and we should be in control of our steel industry. We should be in control of our destiny, and we only get that if we vote to leave on June the 23rd.
This is a question to both of you. Apart from the NHS, what should we spend the £350 million a day savings on? A week? No, this is a day, of course, it's £55 million a day. So yeah, £350 million a week. Take your pick.
Well, of course, I think the other thing the Remainers are trying to sort of say is that, you know, there's all this money comes back to us and we would lose it. And you know, I know you all know, but we have to keep reminding people it's our money. You know, it's our money. When I was sports minister and I used to go and open certain things, and there would be a big thing behind me saying, you know, thank you to the European Union for funding this or contribution. And I would always start off by making a point of saying, you know, I just would like to say that it might say the EU here, but this is actually your money. So at least you've got something in your area. But the reality is, of course, we have no say in it. I would personally think that the most difficult issue facing us today is how we can keep our public services in a way that is dealing with the increased demand generally, and it's not just in the National Health Service, it's in our schools and our housing in particular. So I would like to see a substantial amount of that money coming back, going into decent housing, particularly in areas where there is great need. But you know, let's not forget, and one of the other things they're trying to say is that, you know, to try and get the farmers to feel that, oh dear, they'll not get their common agricultural policy, their subsidy. And we have to remind people again that long before we were in the common market, this country did recognise that farmers needed support. So the money that's going into farming, there's absolutely no reason why it wouldn't still go into farming. So we will have that money back, but the crucial thing about it is that we will decide, not the unelected bureaucrats who come over and tell us, oh look, we're giving you this, aren't we good? So that it's really underpinning everything, in my view, about the whole question on the 23rd of June is democracy, is actually knowing that we are in control. And the certainty, the only real certainty is that if we leave on June the 23rd, there may be uncertainties, but the certainty is that we will face them as a country and we will be making the decisions about what happens, and that's what we'll do.
You know, when you really think about it, isn't it extraordinary? We have paid vast sums of money to have our independence, democracy and freedom taken away from us, and the bit they give back to us, we're supposed to be grateful for. I mean, I find the whole thing extraordinary. I completely endorse Kate's comments There's no such thing as European money, it's our money. You know, and I keep telling people, you know, give me 20 quid, I'll give you 10 quid back, you then tell me how much better off you are, because that's the deal. That's the deal that we've currently got. So, there will be an independence dividend for this country of about £10 billion a year. Wouldn't it be wonderful to see a national debate followed by a vote in Parliament as to how we should spend that £10 billion? Let's engage the people. Personally, I'm going to be campaigning to use that money for a massive reduction in beer taxes. Any advance there? But this is the point, isn't it? The point is, once we have the power back to make these decisions, we can decide, we can vote for people, we can be engaged in this debate. At the moment, these big questions that you're asking about money, about steel, whatever it is beyond us as a country, as a democracy, to make those decisions. We've given that away. We've given away our birthright to determine our own destiny. We want our country back.
Personally, I'd like to see some of it spent on looking after our ex-servicemen. 9,000 of them slept rough last night. To both of you, will Brexit lead to closer relations with non-EU countries?
It couldn't lead to worse relations, could it? Because we find ourselves in this amazing situation, whereas the world's fifth largest economy, whereas the country that speaks the world's business language, as the country that is at the head of over 50 countries that are in the Commonwealth with 2.2 billion population within it, we're currently, because we're members of the EU, and its so-called customs union, we're currently banned and forbidden from making our own trade deals with any other country in the world. What madness is this? What madness is this? So freed from European Union, we'll be able to cut our own one-on-one bilateral deals with any country in the world that we choose. And I personally do have the same prejudice as all this panel, I suspect. I personally think that re-engaging the Commonwealth, who we treated so dreadfully, is a very good place to start.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we would be then able to go back and join many of the international bodies that we are not allowed to be on anymore, which gives us our own place back, rather than having some kind of Belgian lecturer speaking for us on behalf of the whole of the 28. No, and he's probably a really nice man, but you know, I find it quite strange that we have allowed that to actually happen. So we would get back our place on the WTO in our own right, the World Trading Organization. We'd be able to. We'd still be members of NATO. We'd still be members of all the things we're members already. It's just that we would be able to do so much more, and therefore, I think that countries outside the EU would look to us for leadership again, which we gave over many, many years.
Next question. What is most important for Britain's future? Democracy or finance?
I mean, frankly, freedom. How can you put a price on freedom? How can you put a price on liberty? I mean, financially, it cost us quite a lot to beat King Philip's Armada. It cost us even more to beat Kaiser Bill's army. It bankrupted us to beat Hitler. But we did it for liberty, democracy, and freedom, and they matter more.
I don't think I could put it much better, but I would say to the question, and it's a general thing, it sort of bugs me, and the Remainers called their campaign Britain Stronger in Europe. Now, we've already mentioned about Europe being the continent. and that they wanted to get that sort of division and idea that somehow we were leaving Europe. But also Britain does not include Northern Ireland. And I feel very strongly, the United Kingdom is what I want to see preserved and strengthened. So it's democracy. It's absolutely about democracy. And democracy can be threatened in so many ways, and it's been threatened completely by our membership of the European Union.
This question is from Joe Fisher. I think it's obviously talking about the greater issue of Turkey joining the European Union. Is it true that the Prime Minister has given £2 billion to Turkey to eventually join the European Union?
Well, yeah, it's called pre-accession aid. I mean, look, currently there is a big negotiation between the Turks and the European Union going on. The Turks asked for €3 billion to help deal with the migrant crisis, which indeed they do have on their borders coming from Syria. The $3 billion was given, and the EU was told in return fewer migrants would come from Turkey. But that didn't really work, so the Turks asked for $6 billion, and the EU agreed, and in return for sending people back to Turkey, they would send us one who they thought would qualify. So we've lost $6 billion for a zero-sum game. And on top of that, there is a proposal that the Turks will have, all 79 million of them, visa-free access to the European Union by the end of this year, and that their membership of the Union will be fast-tracked. When you think about what Turkey's achieved in these negotiations, it's a great pity David Cameron didn't employ a Turk to negotiate for him. The thing that really makes me angry, I said it in my speech earlier, but Dave, as he likes to call himself, has, since 2006, spoken out again and again and again on Turkey joining the European Union. He wanted to pave the road from Ankara to Brussels. He said in 2010, I will fight for Turkish membership. He said even last year, he's in favour of Turkey joining the European Union. And now there's a referendum. He says, oh, well, it's okay because we've got a veto. Yes, Mr. Cameron, but it's not a veto you intend to use, so stop deceiving the British public. We've had about enough.
Yeah, I think the fact that the mandarins in Brussels want to see a country which is only 3% European in the European Union tells you all you need to know. Okay, last question from Phil McDermott. There is talk of the EU raising huge tariffs on goods when we leave. Can they do this?
No, they can't. Look, the thing my mum and dad voted for, we were a family involved in business, we voted for zero tariffs because we'd lived in a world where tariffs had been very high. Ever since the Wall Street crash, ever since World War II, a lack of trust between nations led to these high barriers where, for washing machines or motor cars, a 40% tariff was quite common. Since we joined the common market, not because of it, but despite of it, there's been this remarkable round of globalization and global trade liberalization through first GATT and then the WTO. The highest tariff that can be charged on most manufacturers under international law is about 2.5%, which frankly is less than your foreign exchange risk on a monthly basis trading with other countries. If they really, really, really wanted to be brutal to us, they could put tariffs of £7 billion a year on British goods. But our net membership fee is £10 billion a year, and we wouldn't have to have open borders, and we wouldn't have to have the 85% of British industry who doesn't export to the EU having to obey EU rules. Whichever way you look at it, our membership of the EU is a rotten trade deal that costs a fortune and is bad for Britain, and even the worst case scenario, even the scenario of no trade deal, of no agreement with Brussels, will leave us better off than we are today.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of the questions. Put your hands together one more time for our fantastic speakers.